The number one thing that'll trigger a dismissive avoidant into deactivation and then the eventual discard of a partner is something that signifies that the relationship is real. Early on in the relationship, it is the shared fantasy, and it's called this for a reason. It's a fantasy world to the avoidant. It's not real. The dopamine is flying high. Dopamine being the reward chemical, the reward hormone. They're feeling good. And that dopamine is numbing and masking all of the anxieties and insecurities below the surface. They're getting all that attention and validation from you, and they are feeling good. This is a person that has spent a lifetime suppressing negative emotions, suppressing emotions in general. But since that dopamine is elevated, they're feeling good and they're letting all of these bottled up emotions flow out onto you. And they even believe that they've got it right this time. But as the relationship progresses, the dopamine levels do come down because the brain can't maintain that level of dopamine forever. And those insecurities start to become more and more prominent, more noticeable. And as the relationship also progresses, things will happen that signify to the avoidant that this isn't just a fantasy. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not just a movie or a romance novel. It's a real relationship. It could be talks about commitment, actual commitment, maybe disagreements, or expectations that you've made known to them. Maybe a friend or a family member came along and said, "Oh, look at you two, you make a wonderful couple. The two of you would have a wonderful family together." Well, now it's real. There's now pressure for them to meet expectations, pressure for them to actually lower their walls and become vulnerable. Disagreements, which can seem insurmountable to them. All of these fears stem from consistent childhood emotional neglect. This is a person that wasn't shown the love and nurturing in the way that they needed as a child. Growing up with stoic parents where you don't talk about feelings, and their feelings were routinely rejected and dismissed. They often had high expectations put on them by their parents, where they only got love and affection and praise based off of accomplishment. So this is a person that has a lot of attachment insecurities, feeling unlovable and defective because they personalize that neglect. That's why they put up walls around their heart, because their subconscious fear is if they let their wall down and they let their partner in, their partner is going to figure out that they are defective and they're going to reject them and hurt them. So they keep walls up and create emotional distance to feel safe. But early on, they are feeling safe because those fears and anxieties haven't been triggered yet. So as the relationship naturally builds and progresses, things get closer, they get more real, and when the dismissive avoidant realizes that it is a real relationship, well, that's when their defense mechanisms kick in. And they instinctively look to create emotional distance between themselves and their partner to feel safe. That's where deactivation comes in. They're shutting down, detaching from their emotions, avoiding the issue, avoiding reflecting on it, and creating distance. And it can be blindsiding to the person that's being pushed away because you thought everything was great. But that's the problem. Everything was great. It became real. And the dismissive avoidant felt like they couldn't maintain that for you because they felt like they weren't good enough to keep you around. So they looked to protect themselves by pushing you away. And the growing closeness, the emotional intimacy that naturally builds in a healthy relationship is really the ultimate trigger, because that makes it more real than anything. So it's no longer a fantasy, and now they are deactivating and looking for any excuse to run for the hills. But because they avoid, that means they also avoid looking within, which means that they look to blame their fears and insecurities on the external rather than the internal. Meaning, looking for things that maybe you did wrong, or incompatibilities that they look for, or even manufacture in their mind to justify their fears so they don't have to take accountability and they don't have to confront their inner insecurities. It's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them, their insecurities, their attachment wounds, their lack of self-awareness, and their character. But As that relationship ends, probably usually somewhere around 4, 6, 8, 9 months, it's not because of anything you did wrong. It's because the relationship became real. And a real relationship means real commitment, real expectations, real vulnerability, real closeness. And those are things that trigger them to their core.